Welcome to my channel, ladies and gentlemen, and allow me to introduce to you another day. Another day, another video. That's how we're going to do it. I tend to make these videos on the weekends, either Saturdays or Sundays, but most likely, most of the videos are on Sundays because I work 5 days a week and I work on Saturdays as well. Sunday is my day off, so I tend to do these videos on a Sunday. But the weather is getting better now, which means I'll have the time to do videos even outside for longer because after work is going into summer. We're in summertime now. It's still bright outside and I can make videos. So let's get into why we're here today. So about 2 days ago, I got into it with somebody on Facebook and we went back and forth. And he was talking about, I can't remember the exact posts. Let me see. I'm going to be projecting my screen again today anyway, but not for the discussion, not for the chat that we had. Yeah. So it was a CNBC's post, and they were talking about investments and how you can become financially free and things like that. And he said that invest in stocks like Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Google, them kind of uh, stocks. And then I said, that's a pretty dangerous information for the general public. People, stay away from individual stocks, go the route of ETFs or preferably indexes. You can't go wrong with indexes. And he was like, no, you're better off being on choosing those stocks. And I said, you can't be stock picking because uh, you're not a unicorn. Because I've read books and read articles where these guys are like, stay away from stock picking, and we know for sure that traders lose. And if even if you're going to invest for the long term, trying to pick stocks is not the best strategy. You have a full-time job, you have a life to live, you most likely have a family, you have other things running in your life. You're not going to be able to keep up with reading all these companies reports and whatnot. And he said, yeah, for beginners, you're better off staying with ETFs or indexes, which is what I advise. Say, but if you like companies or if you like reading reports, pick stocks. I said, okay, you can pick stocks, but make sure it's a small percentage of your portfolio that you're using for that. The huge part of your portfolio should not be in picking stocks because you can't beat the benchmark, which is the S&P 500. You can't beat it in the long term anyway. And he said he's been able to beat the stock market consistently. And I said, well, you can't beat it in the long term unless if you're gonna just invest and hold, you can't pick stocks and beat it. If you're gonna use other strategies like trading options and whatnot, maybe then you have a chance. But just picking them, you can't. And he said, of course, he's been doing it. I went through his profile on Facebook. There's absolutely nothing regarding stocks. And I tried to see if in his description he has anything. And he said he invests for friends as well. And I'm thinking, if you have a public profile and you do invest, unless he has another profile, so but you tend to want to link them together to show what you were doing. But I can't from your profile and the links. I can't seem to find anything that has to do with stock investing. Now, I'm not denying what you said, but there is no evidence to prove what you've just said. And he said, well, those companies are in the S&P 500 and there's a reason they're in the S&P 500. Before we actually got there, I said, Warren Buffett already placed a wager to say you can't beat the index fund in the long term. And to back that up, here is a study. So I'm going to project my screen onto your screen now. It should be on that side, I believe. Now, here it is. If you just go to Google and type in Warren Buffett's wager. Okay, I didn't put apostrophe S there, but hey, whatever. Warren Buffett's wager. Now, you see where Investopedia, the very first one that came up on the screen here is Investopedia. If you click on that, we'll just go through it quickly. See, in 2008, Warren Buffett issued a challenge to hedge fund industry. These are hedge funds. These are not normal guys. Okay, these are unicorns. you don't get to be in the same room with these guys. They've invested, and I said in the post to him that Do you think you can beat the hedge fund guys who invest billions of dollars into machines that execute trades in nanoseconds, and they hire the brainiest whiz kids they can find and pay them millions to do this? You think you're gonna beat them with your home broadband speed? So we got we got into it, and this is hedge funds, and Buffett is challenging those hedge funds and saying, uh, uh, in his view, okay, so in 2008, Warren Buffett issued a challenge to the hedge fund industry, the whole industry, which, geez, in his view, charged exorbitant fees, because fees are a huge part, that fees and tax, they eat into your profit like nothing. Exorbitant fees that the fund's performances couldn't justify. Protige Partners LLC accepted, and the two parties placed a million bet. Now, Buffet has won the bet. Ted Sidis wrote in a Bloomberg op-ed in May. The Protige co-founder who left in the fund in 2015 conceded defeat ahead of the contest scheduled wrap up on December 31st, 2017. So the challenge was supposed to end on December 31st, 2017, but Ted conceded defeat in 2015 because at that stage he knew not like they weren't going to catch up anyway. For all intents and purposes, the game is over. I lost. Look at that. The hedge fund accepted defeat, that despite charging exorbitant fees to these huge conglomerates and people with millions and billions, they still can't beat the low cost S&P 500 on a 10-year basis or in a long term basis. They still can't beat it. So I told you, the person I was having a chat with, that, do you think you can beat these guys? And he said, "Oh, I'm using Warren Buffett. That I should check his portfolio. That he doesn't have an index fund in his portfolio." And I said, "Well, he doesn't have an index fund. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I haven't seen his portfolio because I don't try to copy it. The man is on a different plane. Okay, I don't believe people who are trying to build a portfolio and people who have built a portfolio should use the same investment strategy. It can't be the same. Now you can copy one or two things, but you can't try to duplicate what they have, because what they're aiming for and what you're aiming for are two different things. And this is one of the problems when people try to imitate already successful people. You can imitate them, but you can't just imitate it on a face value. There's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. And if you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, you could be setting yourself up for failure. Buffet's ultimately successful contention was that, including fees, costs, and expenses, an S&P 500 index fund would outperform a hand-picked portfolio of hedge funds over 10 years. That was the wager, and Buffet won. If this tells you anything, it means if you're looking for the long term, an index will be the best place for you to go. Now, back to the full screen. He said those stocks that he mentioned are in the S&P 500, and there's a reason they're in the S&P 500. I said, you're correct, they're in the S&P 500, but you're not telling the full story, because the S&P 500 historically, I believe, started in like 1957. The companies that were originally in the S&P 500, I don't think 90% are still in the S&P 500 anymore. In fact, I put my screen up again. If I go to here, and I did a little bit of that before I came on here. See, how many companies have ever been in S&P 500? Let's not go to the one we are looking for. Is okay. How long do companies stay in the S&P 500? This is a quick Google search. You don't have to spend days on it. A recent study by McKinsey found that the average lifespan of companies listed in Standard & Poor's 500, that's what S&P 500 stands for, was 61 years in 1958. I believe it started in 1953 or 1957. But he said the average lifespan of companies in the index is 61 years, which is a long time. Today, it is less than 18 years. McKinsey believes that in 2027, 75% of the companies currently quoted on the S&P 500 will have disappeared. So if you try to choose, I told him, I said, if you try to choose companies based on the fact that they are in the S&P 500, those companies are not guaranteed to be there in the long term because the S&P 500 has strict rules. It puts companies in and removes companies. And this is why you pay what is called the expense ratio, which is the payment for the managers for managing that fund. So you're not doing the management. So if you're a beginner, instead of going to read all these reports on stocks to find the best one, somebody somewhere is already doing it, and what they're doing has been proven to be the benchmark for the industry. Why don't you just pay the expense ratio on that? And I think it's 0.0. I can't remember the exact amount. I'll have to check it up, but you can check it up as well. Expense ratio for S&P 500. It's really low. Okay. And he's saying 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 now will no longer be in the S&P 500, which means they will have been replaced by 2027, or let's even say 2030. They will have been replaced by other companies. Why play Russian roulette with individual companies when you can just be the market or be a piece of the market or own a piece of the market that whether they remove companies and put them back or not, you are still in the game. You see, it is better to miss the train. People have this FOMO, fear of missing out. It is better to miss the train than to get blown out. If you miss the train and you still have your capital, you can always reinvest. If you lose your capital on a company, you're out of the game. Okay, you're out. I think it's a very dangerous game to play. Now, I said there's a reason also. I gave him this last point that Warren Buffett said after he dies, his portfolio for his wife should be put in the S&P 500, and this is where it is a low cost index fund. See, here Buffett noted that upon his passing, the trustee of his wife's inheritance was instructed to put 90% of her money into a very low fee stock index fund and 10% in short term government bonds. That is called the 90-10 investing strategy. Now, there are different types of strategies. There's a 90-10 strategy, there's a 60-40 strategy, there is the every all weather or all season portfolio by Ray Dalio, the owner of Bridge, the founder of Bridge Water Hedge Fund. There are different strategies, but ultimately, he is saying that when I pass, there's a reason why this man says, when I pass away, apart from the chunk that will be given to charity and all that, what is left for my wife should be put in index funds, because he believes that only very few of them can actually beat the market consistently. So, and that is despite them reading, having a library of study and reading reports and reports, hours and hours every day. We don't do that. We mere mortals, we don't do that. We have a life to live. We have jobs to go to. We have side hustles. We have things to do. The last thing you want to do is abandon those things and spend all your time reading um, company reports and financial statements. If you spend all your time doing that, where are you going to get the money to invest in the first place? So I believe with that, I hopefully have convinced you that investing in index fund, if you're looking for at the long term, investing in index funds will be the best thing to do. Or investing, if you can't afford it, like for instance, if you want to trade options, one of the ways that you can beat the market is trading options on the market, but you have to be really, really conservative with that. You can't be aggressive. uh, if you can't trade if you can't buy 100 shares of the index, you can try to buy 100 shares of the ETF that tracks the index. So what I mean by that is it moves just like the index. A single stock of the S&P 500 today is about 412 or $400. So 100 of that, that's actually, did I say 400? 4,000. A single one. Okay, $4,000 or $4,120. 100 of that, you're talking about 412,000 or so. So there's an ETF which is SPY that tracks that, and that's a one decimal place behind, so that's 412. Right? So what you need for that is 41,000 as opposed to 412,000. Same with Dow Jones. There's a DI, DIA, Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is an ETF that tracks the Dow Jones. So you can buy those because there are decimal points less, 1 decimal point to the left of the index. And that brings me to the conclusion of this video. Hope you've learned one or two things. If you want to play with individual stocks because you like them for whatever reason, use a very small percentage of your portfolio to do that. The vast majority or the huge chunk of your portfolio should be in index funds or ETFs that tracks index funds. And I leave you at that for today. Hopefully see you next week or see you next time when I make another video. In my next video, I'll be showing you something quite interesting. All right, catch you then.